open up the floor to questions. So if you have a question, just raise your hand up and direct it towards any of the panelists, all of them, whoever has more knowledge on the topic or on the question. Even if you forgot what they were talking about, one of them will answer you.
Right, so like you said, if you have a question, you can raise your hand. Thankfully, we're in a small room, so we don't need mics and no real setup. It's just an informal kind of thing. Before we begin, I from the topic today, just really reminded me of this poem by Martin Niemöller, and I think it'll lead up into the questions as well. And he said, well, it's part of his speech, I think. I'm pretty sure everybody's actually heard of this. First, they came for the communists. And I didn't speak out because I wasn't a communist. Then they came for the trade unionists. And I didn't speak out because I wasn't a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews. And I didn't speak out because I wasn't a Jew. Then they came for me. And there was no one left to speak out for me. And I think that's what pretty much sums up many of the sentiments that have been presented today. Again, the topic was not on the validity of the MEPAD as which ruling or what the religion has to say, but the idea is, what does it represent? We're here for the principle more than the actual cause. All right then, so anybody who has questions? All right, first one.
I'd like to ask you just more clarification. You had mentioned that Muslim Qadi would be willing to show their face speaking video to another woman. Is that correct?
Yes.
Now, has that been discussed at all in Kenya, and do you know if there's been any reactions to that?
I wrote a letter to him, and there's no response yet. And there, in that letter, I suggested that as a solution, because they created the problem, but they didn't create a solution. So I was saying, you accommodate us in voting and traveling and license and like driver's license, etc. So why can't you also accommodate us when we come to recycle? So there's no response yet, but I did, I suggest that as a solution.
But since that solution has been offered for the other things you listed, it's not an ignorance of that fact, it's ignorance of that
yes,
fact.
Yes.
I actually read a press release or a statement by Kenny, sorry, and he was saying that he has no intention of making these exceptions or allowing these exceptions to happen. Like there will be no like I don't know why. There it is. There will be no compromise. The law, like this is going to be the passed law, and that's how it's going to be, and there will be room for changes.
Anybody else? All right.
Okay, just kind of an opinion question. I'm just wondering, what do you guys think? Like, why is this all happening now? Like over 10 years after 9/11. Why is all of this intolerance? I guess.
If I was to take a guess, and I'm not a public policy person, but I would probably argue that it's in line with this radical secularization move that's happened in Europe, and it's just pretty much come home to roost now. The reason why niqab is banned in certain countries, such as France and other Belgium, the Netherlands, has more to do with protecting the state from religion, which is a principle of laïcité, which is different than secularism that we would know. So secularism would, in a very sort of limited way, would protect people from the state interfering in religion, whereas laïcité works the opposite way. And that's why we saw it in Quebec, because that does fall in line with what the French are doing. Why it happens in places like Syria, it could be argued that it's more of a geopolitical thing. So you want to not promote Saudi influence into these countries, and that's why they do it in places like Syria. Canada moving in this direction, I would have to argue, is probably more in line with the European model.
Any other questions? We'll go for it. We'll take one.
I was just going to ask, just from maybe each of your opinions, just general ideas of what we as Canadians, whether we're Muslim, not Muslim, whether we wear the hijab, whether faith filled or not, ideas of maybe what we could do about something like this.
What you could do about the ban, you mean?
Yes.
There are many, well, today's event is one thing that you can always do, you know, periodically, bring awareness to the youth, write letters to the Prime Minister, write letter to our MPs, hold meetings with our MPs. There are lots of things that you can do to stand for injustice. And as all of the panelists mentioned, we need to all stand together. Whether this issue is affecting you right now or not, that's not the issue. The issue is standing against, you know, standing up for injustice, because you never know what happens next. You never know what situation you're going to be in next year. You might need the support of your community. So let's all stand together, you know, when injustice happens.
And just adding on to that, I think that she made a really good point about the youth and how it's our responsibility to stand in solidarity with any injustice in Canada, and that because we are the future, and whether it's through educational means or simply writing a letter to someone like Kenny, like anyone that's involved or has some sort of authority over us, that's small things make a big difference. So yeah.
Just to add to that, I think there was more outrage over Bill 94 than there is over this. Can't really say why. I think it's, you know, there's a number of reasons for it, depending on the time it came out, time of year it came out, what everybody else is busy with. But what's the most scary about, or the most scary thing about this particular issue, is that Kenny has openly stated he doesn't care if somebody comes with a charter challenge, which means he doesn't care about what the charter says our rights are. So it's niqab today. I have no idea what it might be tomorrow, but I bet you it's going to impact all of us in a very real way, because there's about 3.5 years left in this government's time, and it's a majority government, so they can they can plan and execute just about anything. So I think that's something that people need to write home. It's not just a niqab issue; it's your right issue.
I think everything that you guys all said was really valid, and I would have said the exact same thing. I think also our own, as individuals, our responsibility is to educate ourselves. Obviously, to educate our community, like you guys said, is super important, but we have to be educated not only on our own issues, but the issues that are affecting all Canadians and all the minorities within Canada and everything. So before we can act, we really need to understand what's happening and how everything relates to one another.
Okay. I only caught like the last little bit of the panel and stuff talking, but my question was that like Fatima was saying something about when she was either 7 years old or in grade 7, how a girl had ripped off her friend's hijab. Like my question is, like, when you're a child, you're a lot more vulnerable to things. So when something happens to you, you know, it affects you and stays with you a lot longer throughout your life than, you know, if you're an adult. How did these things kind of affect you when you were a child? And do you think that by the government imposing certain restrictions, like if a child is being brought up in an environment where they're getting conflicting messages, what do you think is going to happen, like long-term wise, like for the you know, kids that are generations to come, kind of thing, in terms of revolution or like problems?
Well, you asked a lot of questions. I'm going to try to take them in order. The first one, with regards to how, I guess, it affected me as an individual. I was like really young when I was going through all that, but at the time I thought I was like, I knew everything, right? Just as any kid does. I thought I was like Top Gun. I thought nobody knows what I've been through. Like nobody's gone through the things that I went through. So as I said before, like when I would come home and talk to my parents about it, I was always told by them, like, stop complaining. You're an ambassador of our religion, and that's a huge responsibility, and it's a huge blessing. So when they would tell me that, you can't really respond by being like, woe is me anymore, right? So alhamdulillah, like that was a huge step forward for me, and it stuck with me ever since. And even when I would feel a little bit weaker or whatever in front of opposition, I would remember this statement and I would keep my head held high. But like the support of family and the support of your community is so important. When we lived in the States, we also had a really strong Muslim community, so we had like a strong base. So not only when I would come home from school, my sisters and I would be crying together about what we went through, but like Friday nights when we'd go to the mosque, we'd have all the other girls in the community crying about what happened to them. So that was, I guess, comforting in some way. So that's on an individual level, but I guess on a broader scale, it can be really confusing because, as I said, like my family and like my siblings and I are born Canadians, so we identify as Muslim Canadians. We don't eliminate this from our identity at all. We're proud to be Canadian and we love living here. So it's confusing when we're talked to as if we've never been in Canada before, or as if we're no longer welcome, or like these messages are super confusing. And without the right support, they can be like very challenging for an individual. The support of a community is super important. What else did you ask?
Oh man, I'm getting confused soon. No, yeah, there's too many questions in one. Like the way kids are being brought up, for example, like at home they're being taught, okay, you know, wear this, be proud of, you know, everything, da da da. But then all of a sudden when, you know, these restrictions are imposed, you know, and it's not even a bully that's doing it, now it's the government, so it's law, you know, so you can't be wearing this coming to school, you can't be wearing this outside. So in terms of like, you know, imagine a kid in Palestine or something, you know, they're revolutionary, but to an extent they might be an extremist, you know what I mean? So do you think this would end up happening in a country like Canada? You know, where these kids, because they're so confused, they end up going to an extreme extent, you know what I mean?
Honestly, I've never really thought about that. Does anybody want to take that?
Yeah, I can maybe answer that a little bit because I've done some work on Muslim youth identity construction post 9/11, and you do have instances where youth, I would say those that are probably a little bit younger than some of us in this room, will feel alienated. And I think the way that makes somebody vulnerable is they can be persuaded by the wrong elements. So you do have the instance with the disappearing Somali youth, who are, again, perfect targets of groups like Al-Shabaab, and they disappear from here, and their parents kind of are none the wiser. But that's because there is a systematic failure, and these kids do feel alienated. And so, yeah, it is sort of a slippery slope. But I mean, I think instead of remedying situations, just to add to what you said, the government creates problems but doesn't quite give us solutions to how to deal with them. And the case I'm thinking of is the son of Mahmoud Jabala. I don't know if any of you are familiar with Mahmoud Jabala. He was held on a security certificate for several years. And he was obviously released, not really charged. And his son, who is approximately, I would think, about 18, or a little bit older, is being stripped of his Canadian citizenship and being sent back to Egypt. And this was just news last week. Now, this is somebody who is a Canadian citizen, who has citizenship, but Minister Kenney has decided he doesn't fit within our definition of what Canadian is. And he's committed a few robberies, I believe, and that was the extent of his crime. But what does that make him the perfect victim for? I don't think he's going to have warm and fuzzy feelings towards Canada, but instead of trying to deal with the issue of a troubled young man, and we have a lot of them in our country, we are stripping this one of his citizenship and sending him to Egypt, which is in political turmoil already. So I think we do, as a community, need to address those issues as well. But I think that's sort of outside of what we were talking about today, which focused more so on niqab. I think that's sort of a side conversation. But I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, you did a good job.
Thank you. I'm glad you're first. So the ideal situation would be that we teach our youth to integrate into the society, not assimilate. So there's a difference between integration and assimilation, and we have to, as parents, we are the ones that are responsible in bringing up our children to be responsible Muslim Canadian citizens, and they have to believe that here they are. If they go to school here and they're being brought up here, then this is home for them. So this helps them to realize that they have to, give back to the society and to be faithful and loyal as Muslim Canadian citizens. So this also helps us to battle extremism when they feel, that it's okay to be a Muslim Canadian citizen. You can't stay here and live here and keep saying home, home, home about something that, doesn't exist anymore in your life. You go back for a visit every 2-3 years. That doesn't doesn't make that place home. It just makes it the home of your, grandparents. So as parents, I think it is our responsibility to bring up our children to be balanced individuals and to be able to integrate into the Canadian society, not assimilate. And also, as a mother, I find that going back to the prophetic traditions, the seerah, teaching our children about the seerah, about our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and about his companions and how all the hardship they went through to spread the da'wah. So when my daughter or when my son, they face hardship, for instance, where people bully them or make fun of them, then you automatically link, what happened to the hardship that Prophet Muhammad ﷺ used to face. And how he, until he was over 60, how he was, battling and how he was trying to spread the message of oneness of Allah or Islam to all the people around him. So it's the ayah in the Quran says, لَقَدْ كَانَ لَكُمْ فِي رَسُولِ اللَّهِ أُسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ. The Prophet ﷺ is our great role or great example. So whatever we face, we link with the seerah. And that gives us comfort because we know that we're not, it's not something new. Also the Prophet says, بَدَأَ الدِّينُ غَرِيبًا وَسَيَعُودُ غَرِيبًا كَمَا بَدَأَ. Yani the Prophet ﷺ, he predicted that our religion, Islam, has started as a foreign, something that's foreign, something that's new. And eventually there will come a time again when it becomes foreign again. So whoever is abiding by the Islamic law, whoever is dressing properly, whoever is maintaining a good level of deen or religion in their homes, they will become foreign again to most of the people around them.
Just one last thing, because you seem very interested in this topic. I would encourage you to look at the work of Dr. Jasmine Zine. She teaches here, and I know Fatima's had a class with her. So she does a lot of work on Muslim youth. If that's an area that you are interested in, take a class with her.